L is
Yup,
for the way
that's who you think it is. The Grimace Mug. The Hello Kitty keychain. Barbie herself. For a limited time, your favorite McDonald's collectibles filled with memories and magic are now on collectible cups. Get one of 6 when you order a collector's meal at McDonald's with your choice of a Big Mac or 10-piece McNuggets. Come get your cup while you still can. At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC on a Tuesday, on which it looks like we are about to make our first signing of the transfer window. Georgi Mamadashvili, it appears that this deal is now entering the final stages. He would stay at Valencia on loan for a year before joining us, when at that point he might be loaned out for a second year, but that's a decision that will be made in time. But it does look like this one is going to get over the line for us. According to multiple outlets, he has rejected the idea or the chance to go on loan to Bournemouth, which seems to be a change from what was originally reported, but it is what it is. But my good friend and yours, Fabrizio Romano, suggesting that the move is getting close, advancing to final stages. Liverpool and Valencia in contact to agree on add-ons structure, package over €30 million. Mamadashvili would stay on loan at Valencia for 1 season. Now, there's an account on Twitter now. I, again, don't know whether or not this can be seen as reliable or not, but they're a reporter who focuses on Georgian football specifically, and it's them who gave the exclusive that he rejected to play for Bournemouth for the year. Liverpool and Valencia were in talks to sign the player to the Merseyside side and send him on loan to Bournemouth. He does not want to play for Bournemouth. The keeper believes it is better to stay in Valencia on a loan basis. So it probably is better because he's comfortable there, rather than sending him to a new environment for a year where they don't have any skin in the game on him. And let's just say he had a bad game, they could just drop him and not put him back in the team because they've got their own goalkeepers that they're happy enough to play. Leaving him at Valencia, where he knows the manager, knows the system, knows the people around him, could help. It likely also helps in bringing down the fee, which, you know, is something that obviously we deal in, is bringing down transfer fees. But yeah, it does look like this one is going to get done. Valencia will pay Georgi Mamadashvili's usual wages during his loan spell, and if Liverpool want him to earn more, it will be down to them to pay the rest. Yeah, so if he signs a contract with us on, let's just say, 70 grand a week, and he earns, I don't know, 40 at Valencia, we would make up the difference. I think that's fine. The journalist who originally broke our interest in this one, Nacho Sanchez, who I believe is a Valencia reporter, he has reported Liverpool and Valencia have agreed a fixed amount of €30 million, stays on loan for a year, and now there are some add-ons to be discussed. if he were to stay at Valencia a second year on loan, some of those add-ons would be removed. And it does look like this one will get done. So that is a great bit of business for us, securing the best young goalkeeper in the world to succeed the guy who is the best goalkeeper in the world. And it does suggest, all signs point to, multiple seasons on loan. So while we buy him now, he wouldn't play for us until 2026, which means 2 more years of Alisson, who's, again, the best in the world and can maintain that no problem for the next couple of years. But it may well be that what Alisson has told the club is, look, I'm happy to stay, but this is my last contract here. I'm not going to sign a new deal. So if you want, I'll stay to 2027, but then I'm gone on a free, or you can sell me a year early and get money back or whatever. So all things considered, I think we've handled this one well. We still obviously have other things we need to do. We have a gaping hole in defensive midfield. We have a gaping hole at left back, regardless of James Pearce, who for 2 years in a row now has said there are no glaring gaps. Actually, no, it was 22-23 said it, so it's 2 out of the last 3 years. There are glaring gaps. There absolutely are glaring gaps in this team, and they need to be addressed. And I had a thought, and it's just a thought. It's not, there's no evidence behind this. It's just a thought. But I do wonder if the reason we're not going for a 6, and again, I don't know if we're not. I have a feeling we will try for somebody, even if it's just an Endo type of stopgap who's an upgrade for a year and then can settle into a backup role. Someone like a Johnny Cardoso, maybe, or Richard Rios. Richard Rios would be interesting in there. But I do wonder if Zubimendi was actually plan B. I do wonder if plan A is currently injured. And that's why we haven't gone for them. I do wonder if plan A is Boubacar Kamara. Because if you think about it, there's the elite caliber of defensive midfielders, and there's 2 of them. There is Rodri and there is Tchouaméni. And when we think about the best defensive midfielders, they're the 2 that we always think of. Foolish people will think of Declan Rice, but that's foolish people. Allow them to be foolish. But then in the group of players below that, there are a couple who absolutely could be elite. And I'm taking out Guimaraes, who's not really a 6, but does play there and plays there to a very good level. But ideally you want him in a midfield that has a bit of dynamism around him. But if you're talking about purely a defensive midfielder in that Rodri, Tchouaméni type of mould, I think Caicedo will get there. I think he might need to get away from Chelsea, or they're going to need to figure out how midfield actually works. But Kamara, for me, would be in that group. He would be behind the other 2, but he would be in that group if not for the injury. The football he has played since joining Aston Villa has been sensational. Now, as a few people have pointed out, because I've floated this idea on Twitter today, the injuries are a concern. It's not just the ACL. It's the ankle injuries he had last season. It's the knee injury he had last season. But he is a phenomenally good player. Like, defensively, he is absolutely out of this world. And part of the reason for that is he grew up playing as a centre-back, played full-back when first coming into the Marseille team, and then got moved into that number 6 position where he had that defensive nous, but he had dynamism and he had mobility to his game. And he's always been really good on the ball. Like, he's always been really, really good, a clever player on the ball, an aggressive passer who likes to get playing forward. He is the closest thing on the market to Fabinho. And it's not really close. he's actually more mobile than Fabinho as well. But the concern is injuries. Now, again, it may be that it's just an idea. There's nothing else to it. The other one is Czech Doucouré, who we looked at last summer, but Palace wanted 80 million for him, and we didn't deem that he was worth 80 million. Now, I think in hindsight, he would have been worth 80 million to us, because if we'd signed him, there was a possibility we could have gone and won the league. He is similar in style to Caicedo. So you could be fairly certain he'd be a good fit with Alexis. The worry with him is he's coming off a torn Achilles, which is a very, very difficult injury to overcome. Now, we have seen certain players in recent years who've come back from a torn Achilles and looked every bit as good as they did beforehand. Eze would be a prime example of that. But we've also seen players come back and it's hurt their mobility. Hudson-Odoi would be an example of that. Now, Doucouré's never been the quickest, but he's not slow. Like he tends to trundle more than anything, but he's not slow. But he's really good defensively, he's powerful, and he's good on the ball. Is he good enough? Questionable. At times, certainly looks it. But I do just wonder if that's why there might be hesitancy from the club to move. That maybe, even though Zubimendi was the one, maybe he wasn't the one. He was just the best one available who wasn't out with an injury or wasn't coming back off a bad injury. And maybe they're looking at it and thinking, well, let's see what Doucouré looks like for the next 5 months and maybe go for him in January. Or let's see what Kamara looks like when he comes back and maybe move for him in January. Or next summer. I think with Kamara, you're more likely next summer. Because he won't come back probably till October, November. He'll be eased back in. Villa are a Champions League team with ambitions to get top 4, top 5 again. They might prefer to keep him. But one of the reasons Villa might be open to selling him next summer, actually two of the reasons. One is profit and sustainability. They signed him for nothing. So even though they'll have paid, the agent fee and the signing bonus, etc., on their books, every penny brought in for him is profit. So he might be a player that they'd be open to selling to help balance the books out. And number two, they did buy Barranchia this summer, who's really good. They got him in the Douglas Luiz deal. And they might look at him and think, would a year to just get used to everything, we'd be confident he can take over. He's 2 years younger, I think, than Kamara, who turns 25, I want to say, later this year. So I do just wonder if maybe those two, because I know for me, if they hadn't been hurt, they would have been the top two on my list. Kamara, then Doucouré, then Varela, then Zubi, then Hjulmand, then Ederson, then Ugarte. We can rule out Ederson and Ugarte, I think, because they're not good enough on the ball for what Arne wants. I think with Hjulmand, I think the issue is the buyout. It's 80 million, which is an extortionate amount of money for a fella that they signed him for like 14 million last summer. And I understood why we didn't move from last summer, because he was coming from a team that didn't have a huge amount of the ball. There was some thought that maybe he was limited on the ball and he was just going to be a bit of a bulldozer more than anything. But he's shown this past season with Sporting, that he's absolutely excellent on the ball. He showed it in the Euros as well when he bossed England around the place and took Declan Rice for a stroll. He's more than proven himself, but 80 million is still very, very high. And with Varela, again, we should have signed him last summer. He went for 11 million, I think, or was it 11 million euro? We should have signed him last summer. Even if he was to be, if the idea was, right, well, we can't get the guy we want, so we'll just sign Varela. He's good enough to come in, play a role, similar to what we signed Endo for, except Varela's a better player. But he could have done that, and then he could have developed into our starter, even if we had an idea of, well, we'll go for someone else next summer. But I do just feel like they might be looking at Varela and thinking it is only one season in Europe. We're not comfortable paying that fee. I think it's 56 million or 54 million is to buy it, something like that. I think it's 65 million euros. What's that, 54, 56? Something like that. So I just wonder if that's the hesitancy. If they don't view that those two are worthy of the buyout clauses. And look, both their clubs have been on the offensive to try and ensure that they stay. Both of them have been made captain at Sporting and at Porto, respectively. We've also seen Guimaraes made captain now at Newcastle. Although I did note that the reporting on that was it's now likely that he stays. Not certain that he stays, but it's now likely that he stays. So that's odd. But yeah, I do just wonder if when Will Spearman was working on this last summer, when what happened, and he started to work towards this summer, if those were the top two names on his list originally, then Doucouré goes down with the torn Achilles, and then Kamara gets the torn ACL, which takes both of them off the table for this summer. Because if you're looking for someone in that Caicedo mold, which I think we are, and if you look at a lot of Zubimendi's on-ball data, it's actually very similar to Caicedo's. And Doucouré fits that. But as an overall six, I think Kamara's better. I think he's a little bit better on the ball than Doucouré. And he's more mobile. Now, Doucouré is mobile. I'm not saying he's not. But Kamara's really good at covering a lot of ground. So I think he's the best package of everything. But the injuries are a concern, and the injury with Doucouré would be a significant concern because it's a torn Achilles. So you just don't know what player you're going to get back. And we've already made the mistake once of signing a player who torn their Achilles, come back and didn't look anything like the player he was beforehand in Christian Benteke. You remember him when he first came into the league? He's an absolute monster. Tore his Achilles, came back, and the pace was gone. He still had the size and the power, but the pace was gone. So he didn't have that added thing that made him a really good player. And with Doucouré, he doesn't rely on pace, but if he were to lose mobility, he could become a bit of a statue, and that would not be ideal. It's just a thought. But yeah, look, we might not get a 6 in. It would be very, very disappointing if we don't. I think if we can't get the starter we want, we should go and buy the backup that we want and move Endo on, or even just keep Endo for the year. But you bring in someone that you think could be a really good backup in that role, not necessarily a starter, but could patch things together. And if you can just rotate through the cast of said backup, let's just say it's Richard Rios, just because I was watching Palmeiras the other day. Richard Rios, Endo, Gravenberch, Jones, and if he sticks at the club, Morton. You can patch together that position between that group. Now, it's a little bit heavy with 5 of them, but Jones will be needed in another position. Gravenberch can play other positions. It could be something you do for a year, and then next summer you sell Endo and Morton. You bring in the starter, whoever that is, or even in January, but let's say next summer, you bring in that starter and they become the backup, and maybe that's the plan. I don't know. I'm more confident actually that we'll get a defender in than a midfielder now. I think Gomez is going to go, and I think that will trigger us to go and get somebody like Hincapié or Inacio or Lukeba, who I keep coming back to, and it's purely that, well, this number one, he is other than Bastoni, who would be more of a transition because he is a centre-back, other than Bastoni, there's no better option to go and get than Lukeba, who's just really, really special. So you go and you get him. He's the best available. He's the one that can come in and be a starter in that position for a decade. He would be expensive, but he would be worth it. So you bring him in. He can also cover centre-back, which makes up for Joe going, because we don't need Joe at right-back. Like, we've got Trent, we've got Bradley. Curtis could fill in at right-back if needed. If he doesn't go on loan, which it looks like he will, but if he doesn't, Besetic can fill in there as well. So we don't need Joe at right-back. Lukeba would cover what we lose at centre-back and left-back, particularly at left-back, where he could be the starter. And I keep going back to Richard Hughes talking about the Olympics. And again, maybe it's just me being silly, but he very purposely mentioned the Olympics. Now, Lukeba would, like I say, would be expensive. You're probably looking somewhere in the 65 million range. But he's 21, turns 22 in December. They paid 28 million for him last summer. And he was really good for them. Really, really good. And he just fits like a glove into the idea of a left-footed Gertruda. He fits that perfectly. Exceptionally good in the ball. Brilliant defensively. There's young player mistakes that need to be ironed out. Playing next to Virgil will help that massively. He just fits that role.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Yeah. Anyway, right. This is Anfield, where the media predict Liverpool to finish in 24-25. Arne Slot's cold Gerald Quansah sub wasn't just about Jules, it changed the game. Inside story of Liverpool transfers under Jurgen Klopp and Brendan Rodgers. What's very clear is that Ian Graham has absolutely no fucks left to give and is just happily tearing strips off Brendan Rodgers because Rodgers doesn't deserve any respect from him. But you can tell he obviously has a lot of respect for Jurgen. But you can also tell that there were times when him and Jurgen very much were butting heads. And maybe it wasn't directly, it might have been that department and Jurgen, the whole recruitment department and Jurgen. But he has great respect for Jurgen, and he knows that the fan base has great respect for Jurgen. So he's biting his tongue a little bit. But with Rodgers, he's not biting his tongue at all. Under 21's boss hints that 21-year-old could stay as his coach on the pitch. Okay, we'll have a look at this. David Ornstein has said that Liverpool appreciate Mark Guehi, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. 21 players who could still leave Liverpool this month. We'll definitely have a look at this one. Right, where the media predict. Let's see. Gary Neville has us finishing 5th behind United and Chelsea. So, we're definitely finishing in the top 3. Andy Hunter says he reckons 3rd. Richard Jolly, predicting positive change. So he seems to be predicting top 4 as well. Phil McNulty says top 4. Gary Neville says 5th. He also suggests that we won't finish in the top 6, which is just absolutely hilarious. He also said that in his opinion, the midfield overperformed last year. He said on national television that McAllister and Szoboszlai and Endo overperformed. Absolute madness. That midfield underperformed. Endo performed more than we expected. Alexis has a lot more to give than we saw last season, and Szoboszlai has so much more to give, it's hilarious. And he was trying to compare. So he said he has United finishing 3rd. He said Liverpool have a better team. And then he said Liverpool have better forwards. That's what they have. So is he trying to suggest they've got better, that United have better defenders? Because Trent is far better than any of their right backs. Ibu is far better than any of their centre backs. Virgil's better than any centre back they've ever had in their history. Robbo has declined, but he's not necessarily going to be a starter when the window's over. But also, their starting left back is Luke Shaw. Our goalkeeper is a million times better than theirs. Our second goalkeeper is better than theirs. And the fellow we're signing to send on loan is better than their keeper. So there's no argument made that they have a better defence than us. So his argument is on the midfield. Well, let's take a look, shall we? So at defensive midfield, right, we have Endo, who's obviously just an average player. But they have Casemiro. Now, Casemiro was great. Last season, though, Endo was better than him. Casemiro fell off a cliff. Now, if Casemiro stays or gets back to the level he was the year before, then he's clearly the better player. So let's just say they have Casemiro, okay? Alexis McAllister is a much, 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 much better player than Kobbie Mainoo, who Neville said the midfield was a disaster last year, but now you've got Kobbie Mainoo coming into it. Mainoo was a regular in that midfield last season, which was a mess. Then you've got Bruno versus Szoboszlai. Now, right now it's Bruno. Okay, so if you're picking a starting midfield group of the two clubs, you would go Casemiro, Alexis, and Bruno. And that's fair enough. But behind them, I'd much rather have Curtis Jones than Scott McTominay. You know? I'd rather have... Would you rather have Harvey Elliott or Mason Mount? Probably Mount. To be fair, probably Mount. But then we've also got Gravenberch and Bajcetic. I'd rather have them than the ghost of Christian Eriksen. So I think our midfield is about the same as theirs. And that's before we sign a 6. That's before Szoboszlai gets back to what he's capable of. And the biggest gulf is Alexis over Mainoo. By far the biggest gulf. So the midfield, personnel-wise, is it's either even or it leans towards us before we sign anybody. Now, look, they might bring in Ugarte, and fair play if they do, but an Ugarte-Mainu double pivot is going to be horrific on the ball. Neither of them can drop in, pick the ball off the centre-backs, turn and play it forward. Neither of them. But midfield is also about structure. And their structure in midfield is a disgrace, whereas ours looks quite promising. I didn't even mention Tyler Morton for us. We've got a lot more options in midfield than they do. So the notion that we got the most out of our midfield last season is just hilarious. We didn't get the best out of any area of our team last year. The defence underperformed, the midfield underperformed, the attack underperformed. Neville is banking on the myth of Klopp performing miracles and Liverpool collapsing without him. There's absolutely no indication that that's going to be the case. So Pat Nevin, who's a former Blue, Leon Osman, who's the most blue of blues, and Steve Sidwell, who's a ginger, so should be ignored at all time, they said we won't be in the top four. Ellen White, I don't know who Ellen White is, but she has West Ham finishing fourth. Oh, she's a football player. She's a retired player. She has West Ham finishing fourth. That's the maddest shout. Like, I know they've had a decent summer, but like, fourth? Ridiculous. Let's see, what else? The Mirror's Matt Maltby thinks we could win the league. Whereas Alan Smith and Simon Mullock Simon Mullock has never been right about anything in his life. They think we're down for a big disappointment. Michael Owen says we'll get second. And so did Shay Giffen. Alan Shearer says we'll definitely be top four. Pretty much the whole Telegraph staff have us finishing third. Okay, so the Guardian have us third. 442 third. BBC Sport fourth. BBC Pundits, it averaged out at third. The Mirror third. The Telegraph third. Interesting. Let them underestimate us all year. Right, who's this under 21 player? So Barry Ludis is talking about Dominic Corness, who's looks like he's going to stick around rather than go out on loan. Right, who are the 21 players that could leave? So Carvalho's gone, Clark is going. So Joe Gomez, Sepp and Tyler, Phillipson and Reece Williams, Doak, Bisetic, Gordon, Blair, Beck and McConnell. And then from the academy, James Norris, Dominic Corness, Tom Hill, James Balagizzi, Lee Jonas, Oakley Cannonier, Callum Scanlon, Marcelo Pitaluga, Jakub Brzezinski, Harvey Davies. So there's clearly a number of them that are never going to be good enough to play for the first team. And if the under-21 manager thinks that they can provide value to him, it's worth keeping them. Not all of them, but a couple of them there. But for a few of them, absolutely, they should just be moved on. And moved on permanently, not loaned, because let's be honest, like, what's the point in loaning these players year after year? They're never going to be good enough to play for the club at a senior level. And because if they were, like, so a lot of them are older than the players Klopp was playing last year. And Klopp was literally reaching into the depths of hell to pull some of them out last year because the injuries were so bad at one point for around the cup final. So, and yet none of these players were even considered, and they don't train with the first team or anything. So, yeah, it's definitely worth just moving them all on permanently. Or again, if the under-21s manager wants to keep a couple of them. Now, again, there's a couple there, Scanlon, maybe a couple of the goalkeepers who might be good enough. Scanlon's only 19 and he's been in the first team picture. A couple of the goalkeepers are very highly regarded, and goalkeepers tend to develop a bit later. So, it just makes sense to keep them or loan them, but the rest, I think, could be let go. Right, AnfieldIndex.com. There is a piece on Mamadashvili, a piece on Gravenberg, a piece on Seth Vandenberg and transfers in general, a piece about Darwin, because obviously Ian Graham has brought him up in a couple of interviews. There is some nonsense about us signing Ademola Lookman for 60 million euros. Not nonsense, the article, nonsense, the speculation from the journalist. Podcast-wise then, Ben Boksic has spoken to Mika Gabacheva to discuss Georgi Mamadashvili. Gabacheva is a scout who currently works for Ghent and used to work for Dinamo Tbilisi, which of course is where Mamadashvili came through. There is the new Scouted, which you can check out. There's also a new rival recon. These are not rival recons for games. These are rival recons looking at our rivals ahead of the season. So this one's about Arsenal. I think the last one was Spurs. This one's about Arsenal, so give Harry a listen there. There is the Monday Lunchtime pod, which you can check out as well. And I saw in the... Right, here's the schedule for the week. So there's a tad predictable, which will be out tomorrow on EPL Index. There'll be an Under Pressure tomorrow. There'll be a Scouser Tommies tomorrow. Then on Thursday, there's a Minefield, which is magnificent. That absolutely, genuinely made my day yesterday when Alan put that in the group chat. There'll be a Molby on the spot. And then we will have Scouted on Friday for Brentford. And obviously there'll be a couple of others. You'll have the joy, the wonderful experience of Trev Downey hosts the Daily Red tomorrow. So you get some of that sumptuous sexual voice of young Downey. And then I'm back to be terrifying your ears with this scumbag voice of mine on Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Dave Davis will be here Sunday. And then I assume it's me all next week. And then Dave obviously next weekend. But yeah, so lots coming. Now that the games are back, the part-time podcasters are all back as well. So thanks to them for that. And enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully we're going to see a very tall, very handsome Georgian man leaning quite soon. I assume they'll just do any publicity pictures over there. I assume the media team would just fly over rather than fly him to England and fly him back. But we'll see what happens. Right, have a good one. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.